What's up, beautiful people? I'm Nathaniel Pearl.
And I'm Sammy Sheva.
And welcome to Curious Chimps Podcast, a show where we explore the infinite complexities of the human experience.
We do not endorse anything illegal, so please consult doctors, do your research, and for the love of all that is holy, be safe. All right, let's talk about drugs.
Curious Chimps.
Going.
What's up, Gregery Miller?
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure, man. Honestly. For the listeners, I'll let you introduce yourself, but just you were part of the animation team for the amazing Midnight Gospel.
Yes. I'm sporting my Titmouse animation hoodie today.
Nice. Does that say Titmouse?
Titmouse.
I love it.
Titmouse Animation. We produced the animation of the Midnight Gospel at the studio in New York and the studio in LA also. So yeah, it was an incredible experience. So I'm a lifelong artist, illustrator. I've been trying to do this for my entire career, just about 10 years so far. Yeah, so
sweet.
Thanks for having me.
Is this like your what's the words? Is this like your first big break? I don't know how else to word it. Like, is this like your first like accolade or like what's the?
Yeah, I think like this is probably the most exciting thing I've worked on for sure. It's definitely like you could probably equate it to my first big break. I did work on an Adult Swim show when I first got out of school, but it never aired. But it was a fun project regardless. We all got paid to draw, so
that's it. Yeah, that's it. I'd be curious. I mean, I hate to derail the conversation immediately, but what was that show? Like, are you allowed to talk about it? Like, since it didn't air.
Yeah, I can talk about it a little bit because there's like a little bit of information online. But you know, whenever I work on any kind of job, we sign NDAs. So the show that I did work on was called Tight Bros. It was produced by Clambake Animation in Boston, and it was for Adult Swim, and it was basically like Jersey Shore meets Beavis and Butthead.
Okay. So like very self-aware, like.
Yeah, it was a bizarre. I mean, shout out to Clambake Animation; those guys are awesome. I love them. Not sure what they're working on these days, but.
So what happened? It just never made it to the air. It just got canceled.
None of us really know what happened.
It's like fuck it.
like we produced like 7 episodes with them. It was like a year of work. Like we did a pilot, we did a demo. First you do a demo, then a pilot episode. Then we produced 7 episodes of a 10 episode series. So that's like a year of work. And then Adult Swim was like, hey, sorry, it's not going to work. So
I think that probably happens a lot in that industry. No, it's just like,
yeah, I think it's probably pretty hard to get a show on the air. Like even after you think you already have it, like there's always hoops to jump through. I'm assuming.
I'm using my references of Entourage to see how the behind the scenes usually works. You know.
Right.
I never watched that show, and I don't think I ever will.
It's pretty good. It shows. It's kind of you get a glimpse of that life.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I should check that out. So yeah, but like, I don't know if you guys wanted to kind of guide the conversation, or if you want me to just kind of go with what's inspiring me.
Just shoot the shit. Honestly, by the end of this, we're probably gonna be talking about psychedelics or something. Like I don't know.
But yeah, like just to give some context, maybe like so. Describing the process of how it came to happen for, well, I mean, you're part of the team, so they called up a bunch of animators, but like the whole process, and it must have been a kind of a surreal experience. Were you a Duncan fan before doing the show?
I will be completely honest. I love Duncan Trussel, but I was not a fan before the show.
Okay.
I'm a fan of a lot of I am a huge fan now, and I,
Nice.
I like.
How
I
can
love-
you not be after that? You know.
Yeah, I mean, I love a lot of what he talks about. A lot of his philosophies. Like, I'm totally on board with that. And yeah, it's just Midnight Gospel was a very surreal experience because it was a show that, like, unlike a lot of animated shows I think that are on television, there's a very set style that you have to follow. But with Midnight Gospel, there is this kind of Adventure Time style that the artists have to follow, but it's psychedelic, it's trippy, and every single episode happens in a different world. So we were actually, advised by the art directors to make each world unique. So you almost had to change the way that you draw in every single episode.
Yeah.
Like episode 4 is a medieval dark fantasy, which I loved because I love that stuff. So it was like a lot of big areas of shadow and cross hatching, and I won't get too artsy with you
Please
guys.
do, man. If you can take us to school, as I like to say, like anything you want to dive into that you would find educational or interesting, because like all I did really was like watch the show. I like the show, but then I watched it again, thinking someone made every inch of this, and like your hand literally made like maybe the vines in the background of that, of what was it, like episode 4 there with the girl with the rose there.
Yeah, episode.
And then so then in episode 3 there's that fishbowl guy, but then there's like similar vines and stuff when he goes in that like abandoned boat, and I'm thinking like, I wonder if the same guy did those vines. I wonder if someone told him to do that, or if it was like a choice. Like I have no idea what the process is.
Yeah,
it's like 20 people doing any given thing.
It's crazy. Yeah. Like, so when I got hired onto that project, first of all, I had no idea what it even was. They were like, "You're gonna work on the Midnight Gospel." I'm like, "Okay, what's that?" And they made me do. They make all artists kind of test, so that you just do like a little. You do an illustration in the style that they provide. So we had really amazing art directors, Jesse Moynihan and background lead Ellie Michalka. They're amazing. Shout out to them.
Shout out.
And they worked with Pendleton Ward, and they would kind of direct the style and the look of the show. So I got an entire PDF document when I started of the way that plants are supposed to look in this world. You have to draw with this type of curve, or clouds are supposed to be represented in this way. And then we get inspiration of other artists. Like one artist, for example, that we looked at was David Gian. He's an artist in LA. I hope I'm not butchering his name. And another guy, the Ghost Shrimp. He goes by the Ghost Shrimp. Do you guys know his work?
No, but I saw his name in the credits. I was like, I was gonna ask you. I was like, who the fuck is Ghost Shrimp?
Yeah, he's awesome. Dan, his name's Dan Bandit. But he basically, Dan the Ghost Shrimp, he like designed the whole kind of look of like Clancy's trailer and like where he lives, and he's also responsible for like the look of a lot of the Adventure Time world. So he worked with Penn Ward in the past, and I mean he's an awesome guy. He's crazy. He lives in like a cabin in Vermont.
That's pretty cool.
He just like draws for animation, and he actually, quick shout out to Dan. He also does this thing called Ghost Scouts, where like artists, like aspiring artists, go up to Vermont and they basically like live off the land with him for a week and do art. And
that's super cool.
Yeah.
Whoa.
That's sick.
Yeah.
Did you do that?
I haven't done it, but I have friends who have done it. I'd love to do it. If things get back to normal, hopefully. I'd love to get up there sometime. Yeah. So like, I kind of helped develop the worlds of episode 3, 4, and 7 mostly. So the underwater world with the fishbowl man. And like
Such a weird show.
that cat ship, the ship of cats.
Oh yeah,
That thing almost killed me. Like I got the
Dude,
job.
I just thank you for your service. I just like it's like a small but paramount detail in that episode, and to say just I didn't expect that you're like that thing was like my fucking life for who knows how long.
No, seriously, like weeks. I was just drawing this bizarre ship from all these different angles, and like, okay, like you can Google or you can like go look at reference of something in life that actually exists, but when you have an item like this ship, which is totally surreal and imagined by someone else, and also like this ship wasn't even fully designed when they were asking me to, that's sometimes animation. It's like everything's happening at once. So I'm, expected to be producing these backgrounds, but the ship isn't even like, they're still figuring out the design, which is fine, but it made it challenging. And, but in the end, I mean, I'm so happy. I'm so beautiful. It's a beautiful cat ship.
I wanted
Cat ship for life.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I'll use like the closest thing I have to a reference would be the restaurant industry. If you go to like a very good restaurant, some of the best restaurants I've been to was they allow the chef and the cooks to they give guidelines, but they formulate the menu per night, like the special menu. And that is where you get some of the best quality food, is because you allow everyone to have that creativity. And
they're winging it.
It's like they're expressing their love and passion for cooking. And it sounds like this show is like the animator's dream, where they have guidelines, but you just fucking go with it and just flow and just use your creativity and create this world. Because like you said, every episode is a different landscape, different characters. So like, I'm sure some moments were hell, but like for creativity, it was probably everything you wanted.
No, totally. I mean, it was a dream.
Nice.
It was a complete dream project. Like any job is challenging. But Jesse Moynihan, the art director, he did such an amazing job by like just giving us the right amount of guidance, but also like giving us free range, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
To kind of explore our own strengths and our own styles through the show, because every artist has a different style, right? We all come into this. When you work as a commercial artist, you develop your own personal style, but then with each project, you have to kind of mold yourself to that look, to that style. Yeah, man, Midnight Gospel, you could watch Midnight Gospel like 5 times and still not take everything in. Like,
I have.
It's like, I mean, you could just watch it purely for the visuals one time, and then you could watch it purely just to listen to the interviews. And it's just so amazing that like Penn Ward and Duncan were able to like take these interviews and like formulate a script and a story around every single one and fit that into a giant cohesive narrative.
Yeah.
Like it's insane. It's just
there's like this like fractal storyboarding where you're listening over and over to this conversation and trying to figure out like, where does this go visually? Where does this go with this Clancy character? Because they even break character a lot and like just say the name Duncan, like, and they just keep it in. They're just like, it'll be trippier. It's breaking the fourth wall. Like, who cares? And I mean, it's that's cool. I guess ambitious is a good word, because it's hard. There's nothing new under the sun for Duncan and Penn to like fusion and really make like a podcast format trippy cartoon, and the execution, like they stuck the landing, like it's really something, man. And
sure,
if I like anyone who's part of that, I'm sure you just feel like I guess pride is like a simple but really strong emotion, and like this, like the just again, like I was saying, something as innocuous for the viewer, let's say, no offense, like as the cat boat, You know, it's a setting. The characters are on the boat. It's still a really fucking cool thing, but it's like we're not thinking of the all the stuff that was left on the cutting room floor. We're not thinking of all the rewrites and the like something has to completely be reestablished on the animation side, and on the concept art side even maybe just because something changed in the story side. You know, like you guys are scrambling sometimes to kind of find this like spearhead. Actually, you know, I'm curious. Like, did you have to worry about continuity? Like, it's a trippy ass cartoon, you know, like, did you have to think about this boat like in 3D sort of, or did you just kind of like next place, next place, next place?
Yeah, no, there's definitely a lot of continuity that happens, even on a trippy show like this. I mean, I'm used to that because I do my own comic series, but and I've worked in animation. But yeah, like that boat, for instance. I mean, you have to work in that style. Actually, after I drew the boat about like 35 times, I went to
35 times.
I went to the background lead, Ellie. She's awesome, and I was like, "Hey, Ellie, like, is there any way like we could make this more streamlined, more efficient for the artists? Like, I'm a little worried that that like this is going to change. We're going to have to change every single background." And she was like, "Well, what if we did a 3D model?" And by the time they kind of got the approval for that potentially happening, I think I had drawn the boat like 55 times and then we were done. So
Wow.
it's like,
It was a good idea. Yeah, it was.
yeah, I was like, well, I really know how to draw this boat now, so great. Because I mean, if you had a 3D model, in the beginning, if you look back, if you had a 3D model from the start, you could just turn it and kind of trace it. But I mean, that's kind of cheating. But I mean,
Hold on a second.
Is that a sound? That's the dogs. Sounds like that's one dog, by the way.
oh wow,
It sounded like a pack of wolves.
yeah.
So yeah, you can continue what you were saying. Samuel, just jump back in. If you had the 3D model.
Yeah, like one kind of cheat we thought about was maybe if someone had made a 3D model of this boat, then we could have just like turned it and traced all these different angles for each background, because it's so precise. You know, you have to just the sheer perspective of every angle on that ship as an imagined item that has never existed in the world, and making sure that perspective is correct from every angle. You know, when you're looking over the shoulder of the fishbowl man and there's like these MC Escher-esque stairs going in every direction on the boat behind him, it's like that has to match when you're looking at the back of the boat as it's melting an ice wall with this, I forget the name of the hand item.
I don't remember either.
It's something that I think came from Jesse's work, Jesse Moynihan. But yeah, so it was challenging, and I mean, everyone is so proud. Everyone is so happy with like the final product. I mean, we couldn't have done it without such an amazing team of artists and creative people. So.
Now I'm kind of retracting what I said before. This sounds like it was. I mean, it was obviously amazing, but it sounds almost like it was so complex that it kind of played against all of you, because now you're saying that the staircase has to look good from every angle. So and that show is just constantly twisting around. So it's to imagine to keep everything in line with where they were initially placed must have been such a headache at some moments.
Yeah, and like, but I don't want to like. I have nothing negative to say about the show or work. Like, it was such an amazing dream project, but yeah, I mean, I think it was more challenging probably to be working on something so psychedelic and imagined than if it was something that like actually existed in our real world, because you can look at a certain type of ship online and draw that, right? From like, we know we can find reference for that.
But a cat ship is hard to find.
Yeah, I mean, this lives in like the ether and in like 5 different people's imaginations, and it's forming as you're designing it. So.
It's funny you said before, like it didn't really click, but I'm noticing myself, because when I watched that show, I was so in like a trance where at moments I would just focus on the animation. I didn't even hear what was going on, and then I would go into the conversation, and then I'd forget what was happening in the animation. And it's one of those shows that you really need to rewatch because there's so much to appreciate.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've only watched it twice. I need to watch it again. I'm still taking things in, and I was watching it when we were working on it. Like,
Wow.
But yeah. So were you guys big Duncan fans before the show?
Yeah. To be honest, like, Joe Rogan, Duncan Trussel, Aubrey Marcus. Like, I think Rogan has a kind of big circle, and then there's kind of these like Venn diagrams of all these other people. And Duncan Trussel was definitely in that. And like, I tell people, I have one friend, he hasn't seen the last 2 episodes, and it's like the death episode and then his mom, like the mom podcast. And I was like, you're missing the 2 best episodes. like
yeah,
I got frustrated because for me, years ago when he recorded that conversation with his mom, that was like his claim to fame for me. Like, he obviously had the podcast for a while beforehand, I think, but like I really got to know, I really got introduced to him as a person at all. And then I find out he's like a weird, his sense of humor is so, he's such a troll, it's amazing. And then he gets into all this like dharma and like yoga stuff, which I'm into, and then he gets into like Tibetan and Buddhism and psychedelics, and he's a stand-up comedian, and he goes to Burning Man, and next thing I know, I just really enjoy this guy. And then I find out I loved Adventure Time. I was like sad when it ended. Like, it's an incredible show that evolved so much from episode 1. It's so basic and so, I mean, obviously even the voice acting, the animation, like everything evolves, but you don't know how much control or how much input Pendleton Ward actually has when something like Adventure Time gets so big. But then to see him and Duncan create this thing, I'm like, oh, okay, like, these guys are awesome. Pendleton Ward and Duncan Trussel, like, they're both just insane people to me, but like insane in a good way. Insane can be a very bad thing, obviously. And I'm not using this word lightly. I think they're both fucking nuts. Like, they have, I don't know if Pendleton Ward is on some kind of drugs or what the fuck kind of life he's had, but like, I'm impressed by both of them. So
yeah, I'm super impressed by both of them. And I only met Penn briefly when I visited LA, and I visited Titmouse there. And I haven't met Duncan, but I've met like everyone around him. I hope to meet these guys and hang out with them someday. They seem super cool. And this was obviously such a passion project with like so many of their ideas that they had been building and developing together for years. I think they had been talking about doing this show for like 10 years or something. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it was multiple years that they wanted to make this so together. Yeah, but I don't know, man. It's trippy. It's crazy. It's a really
I'm not surprised. Yeah.
It's going back to know about Duncan is that this weird era of the internet is like, it takes you on people's journeys now. And like, I've been following Duncan for almost probably close to 10 years, just from the JRE and just following his podcast and then seeing him live a few times, performing his stand-up. And in a weird way, I saw his progression in life and spiritually, business-wise, whatever. And it seeing this show come to fruition and being on TV now, it was like, in a weird way, because I never met Duncan. Oh, I met him briefly in crowds, but never actually had a friendly conversation with him. It was almost like a friend, seeing my friend be successful. And when that happened, I was just like, holy fuck. And I had this sense of like deep gratitude, and I was so proud of him. And just like, that was a really surreal moment. I'm like, fuck yeah, Duncan has a TV show now and it's out. You know, it's like, this guy's finally getting the recognition that he's built and he deserves. And yeah, it was a surreal moment, just like fucking Duncan as a Netflix show, seeing him from the GRE 10 years ago.
Dude, it came out on 420, which is like, yo, blaze it, but then also it's his birthday, and I didn't even know that. Right. And I was like, oh man, this guy's like a warlock. Like, this guy was born on 420.
Yeah, he is. He's a warlock. That's describe it.
Just for those who don't know Duncan that well, like when he came to Montreal to perform for stand-up, he opened for Joe Rogan. He had the entire theater. We were about 3,000 people, all chanting Om, and he was holding an incense, doing some satanic chanting. And it was the weirdest experience. I don't know how he got this whole place to just chant Om for 10 minutes, just on a repeat. And he was just doing this crazy prayer. It was the funniest thing. It was just, that's Duncan. So the show didn't surprise me at all.
I mean, he has such a cult following. I mean, it's not in like a bad way. Like it's a beautiful thing. I mean, I was going to go off on this other tangent. I totally forgot what I was going to say. Before you
come back around.
Yeah. Man, I don't know. Yeah, it was. Oh, okay. Yeah, you were saying you were so proud of him. Yeah, it came back.
It always comes back.
It was like a friend. Like you were seeing a friend become successful almost, and I feel similarly with the team, just like being a part of this team. I feel like I was like welcomed into this amazing family, at Titmouse Animation, and the people who are, running this show, the creators. It's a really amazing feeling because like now me and all my friends who worked on the show, for one, we have like this really cool thing in our portfolios and on our resumes.
Yeah.
But, it's hard. I mean, being an artist, obviously, making a living as an artist is difficult. So something like this is such a boost for all of us. And we can boost each other. We can promote each other on social media and
Nice.
Yeah, it's really cool. But yeah, actually, what you were saying, Sammy, was like you were talking about it coming out on 420, and I remember I was messaging with one of my friends, one of the animators, or one of the background painters, actually, my friend Mal. She was like, "Can we talk about how Midnight Gospel is airing on 420, and episode 1 is about like weed in a pandemic?"
Which was created probably long before this whole
a little on the nose, yeah.
Which is crazy.
Maybe a little too on the nose, but I think it was perfect that it came out at that time.
I was getting some cabin fever, and then I see this thing with no announcement. I had no idea this was coming out, and I didn't even kind of make that connection about the first episode being this weird kind. It's just like a zombie apocalypse, but it is a this kind of apocalyptic global pandemic thing. And I was so happy to be like, oh, I got something new to watch on Netflix that I'm like, as you go, you just get more and more excited. You're like, oh, Duncan Trussel, Pendleton Ward, you run out of gas. You're like, oh my God. And then I just killed it all in like a day or two because it's only like 6 or 8 episodes or something. Like,
I mean, I remember
short and sweet.
It is. And I remember finishing the last episode, the interview with his mother, and just like, it was like late at night. Like I had been like working on these freelance projects and then trying, like basically binging it like every chance I got until it was done with. This was like within the first couple of days it came out. And then I finished episode 8 at like 1 a.m. And I remember just fucking like bawling my eyes out. Just like
pretty much same story for me, man. Yeah.
Just like by myself in the middle of nowhere, like during this pandemic, like Jesus Christ, like for so many reasons, because like for one, obviously the subject matter of him and his mom is just so heartbreaking and beautiful. But then like for me, like having worked on this thing, like I have like this other layer of like, I'm so proud and grateful, and like I can't even handle the emotions of experiencing this.
Mm.
Like, and it took me
must
like it
Oh,
took me
sorry.
days. Sorry, no, I'm just. It took me like 2 days to just like. Do you ever like watch something that's so heavy and you just have to like, you can't even do like you can't like move your brain from that. It's like you're mentally like fixated on that for the next couple days. Like I didn't absorb anything. No music, no animation, no TV. I was like working in silence for 48 hours after I watched it.
Wow.
Just trying to
100%.
process everything, you know?
Yeah, it was so heavy. I feel that way sometimes when I just finish a series. Like Adventure Time's a good example, because it's like you finish a good book and you're sad. You finish a good series, or a good album, or a good whatever, or a great project, you know. And there's a clear sense of loss because it is over. And the way it ends, I don't want to spoil anything, but like if someone hasn't seen it, you know that there isn't more coming. You know there isn't a season 2 or something. And if there is, like, sure, why not? But like it wouldn't really, I don't know if it would make sense. And it's like if you have the instinct or the wisdom to not ingest anything else for a while, then you really get to absorb what you just experienced. And it is like a bittersweet, it's somber. It's kind of like in the death episode when they're talking about sitting with the body. You know, like you don't really want to do it, but it is so cathartic to really just take in the fact that this is over now. And I can't imagine how you felt when you guys actually wrapped up the project. You know, I'm sure you made a bunch of friends, and I'm sure that it was such a passion project. It became a big passion project for you once you started getting in the groove or whatever. Like I can only imagine that extra layer, like you're saying.
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah.
For sure. I mean, it's almost like I don't want to steal this from, well, I'm just like, this is coming to mind. The art director, Jesse, he was talking about when he stopped working on Adventure Time, and it was almost like a breakup. Like it's almost hard to like, I mean, it's not hard for me to watch the show, but it was at times hard because it's so powerful. Yeah, no, the death episode, man. I mean, just to like swing back around, episode 7, I worked on that a lot, and that was insane. I mean, I built like the junk world inside his bag, like the hoarding.
That was you?
Yeah, that was all me.
Wow.
Well, not all me, but like I played a big role.
Before I even knew we were going to talk to you, I was obsessed with that background. Like I paused it and saw all these random fucking items. Like you could have been so lazy with like mounted, like, you know, kind of silhouetted mountains, but there's just stuff.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to take too much credit. Like, so the Jesse Moynihan was like, and Ellie Michalka, they were such great art directors, and they really pushed us to like, to really just, you know, I don't think I was lazy. I was trying to find really like unique items that Clancy may have collected through his travels to different worlds. So, you know, they gave us some ideas, the art directors, like there's a lot of like sacred items. Like I think there's a Sphinx. There are a lot of weird, like, there are like eyeballs. It's like musical, like bizarre musical instruments from other worlds that I kind of like created based on real instruments. So the idea was like, he's like kind of like a hoarder. Like he forgets that he collects these things and he puts them in his bag. And so when I was assigned to that episode, like, okay, I saw the storyboards, which are very loose, but you know, he falls into his bag, and he's basically falling from the sky into another world, and it's just mountains and mountains of items. And you can't illustrate in detail every little item, but you can, the items that are closer in the foreground, you know, they have more emphasis. And as you get further out, it's more kind of heaps, and you're not really sure what you're looking at. Like, is that a giant plush elephant from the 60s that was maybe in my grandmother's attic. Like, you kind of like you're literally pulling like weird stuff out of your imagination and your memory, and also like you're searching like on the internet for reference, and you're talking to the other artists, like, what do you think would mix with these items? Like, does a Sphinx make sense, or does he have toys? Like, does he have how long has he been collecting these items? You have to ask all these questions as you're working on it, since he was
so yeah, I didn't think about that kind of that profound, like again, like kind of, I almost want to call it like a silent continuity. Like, it's not about the continuity of the episode, but it's like, this is Clancy's bag. So it's like, at first you're thinking, okay, there's set pieces. He says hello to the Sphinx or something, or like the sarcophagus or something. Like, there's stuff that needs to be there a little more, like more foreground. And then there's kind of like layers where, like, literally in a little more background, where it's like this stuff that you put in so much thought into, and you're looking into like sacred geometry and like instruments and stuff, and like you're stretching yourself thin, and then you're like, okay, just items. Like, what did I see in my grandmother's attic when I was a kid? Like, you're just like, now you're just like, stuff. I just need stuff.
Right.
It's a fucking process. It's processes on processes that people, I think a lot of people these days, because of stuff like podcasts, we get to see these worlds, but you're maybe someone like me, like, I pause it and I look at this stuff because I'm a weird kid, but like, I don't think a lot of people are going to instinctively appreciate it. And that's kind of, I mean, how do you feel about that? Because you're creating this stuff, and it's like in the name, you're animating and designing the background, and it's like the drum, it's like the bass line to a song. People feel it, they don't hear it consciously. It's so important, and yet it's something you might catch the second or third time you watch the show,
Right. It's so important, but it's kind of like, I think I know what you're saying. Like, it's almost in like the peripheral of what you're experiencing and what you're absorbing as you're watching. So, I mean, but if it was just a blank background, you wouldn't get the same feeling. Like, if he just
noticed. Yeah.
Right. If the exact same thing was happening in that episode, but he falls. Well, I mean, look where he was before he fell into his bag. It's like a blank golf ball world. It's like a big white circle, and he pulls this slide thing out of his bag, and he needs a hose so he can go on the water slide. And he like has all these things in his bag that's just collected. It's so bizarre. And then he like shapes himself as he tries to slide because he doesn't have the water. It's so funny. There's all
that
this
is the slapstickiest episode. Like, he keeps falling on the fridge and shit. Like,
I know. Yeah. That was my fridge too.
Nice.
Oh yeah, that's amazing. I wanted to ask you, and now I'm getting a picture of it, but where does most of your inspiration come from, or how do you manifest that and cultivate your inspiration? Because I can imagine there's moments where it's just like there's nothing coming to mind, especially when something like this, where you feel like it is pretty broad for creativity. Sometimes maybe that can play against you, where it's too out there that it's hard to narrow it in.
Yeah, no, it is hard. And that's why it's important to like have a really open dialogue with your art directors when you're working on something like this, and with the creative leads, but even sometimes they don't really know, and they're expecting you to kind of like give them something to then give you feedback on. So sometimes you just have to like take a shot in the dark and just start throwing in random items like in the junk world, and then like I'll get feedback, and this doesn't work, like you can't have these beach balls in there, or like this 90s game console you put in here, like it looks too much like a PlayStation. Can you make it more of a unique item to this world that isn't a trademarked item from our world? So I'm getting this kind of feedback from the art directors, and so there's like a Nintendo / PlayStation in that scene that's like in the foreground, and it's like I wish I had that system. It looks like fun.
I think I had the same thought. That's the best part. Like, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and then like the sarcophagus, like you know, just down to the smallest details of like its eyes are diamonds. It's not a realistic person's face on there. You know, if you look at David Jian's work and the Ghost Shrimp and a few other artists I could send you guys after that I'm blanking on, we kind of like, we were looking at their work a lot to try to like find a style that kind of met somewhere between Pendleton Ward and Adventure Time, but more, yeah, I mean, just kind of more trippy, more Duncan.
More Duncan.
Yeah. Yeah.
It sounds like you guys were like a tightly packed group where it was like you could feed off each other and bounce ideas off each other and get inspired from each other. And I think you see that's a big difference in the artist world versus, well, not for all artists, but mainly the artist world when it comes to animators and even comedians and whatever. There's this sense of community where the ones that are doing well are usually doing well because they always help each other out.
Right.
You know?
No, totally.
So it's not as it's a competitive environment, but there's like a collective group in there, which is beautiful to see. And then you get something like this product where you see it how many people were on that team that built that whole thing could only work together if they all work together.
Right, totally. And like I'll be honest, like I'm kind of an introvert, or I was growing up, and I feel like I'm definitely now more of an extroverted introvert. But like a lot of visual artists who work in animation or illustration, it kind of goes against our nature to be collaborating sometimes. So that's kind of a skill you develop as you go. And yeah, I mean, just feeding off of my fellow background designers who I sat next to in New York at Titmouse, like Denny and Matt, like Matthew Hernandez, Denny Fink, shout out to you guys, you're awesome. And the background painters I sat next to, Janet and Kyle. Sorry, I'm blanking. I'm still waking up.
It's all good.
Yeah, I mean, we were all feeding off of each other for sure. And it was like, oftentimes I would find I was stuck on a background and I would need some feedback from someone else. And if I was working by myself, that might be a little more difficult. So that's why this pandemic is so weird. Like I mean, it's like redefining how we all work. Like I'm working on freelance projects right now, but everyone's just feeling pretty, I think, lonely. Like we all wish we could. That's why this is great. Like we can video chat, we can have podcasts, we can stay connected. It's such a strange time. But,
oh man, it's so odd. And like I find myself, because Sammy was mentioning, which I wanted to hit you, Sammy, because you're like, I don't have to go grocery shopping.
Yeah.
When I go grocery shopping, it's this weird feeling that like I kind of want to stay there for a little bit because there's so many people, even though we're all like separated in our own like spaces. It's just that human connection is so valuable. And I don't want to get down like a negative route, but it's really sad to see the fabrics that make us human are being pulled away. And it's, that separation is not good for anybody. Even if we're introverted, I actually really enjoy my alone time, but it's in our nature that we need community, whether it's just 5 minutes of just being in a group setting versus being alone. But it's scary to see what's happening right now, and that we have to resort, which is not terrible, a video chat, which is pretty cool, but there's that real human presence that you can't label it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different feeling when you're standing in front of someone than like what we're doing right now. I mean, this is still better than nothing, obviously, but yeah, I know what you mean. Like when I go to the store and I just want to kind of hang out there and like, or let's just like talk to a random person. Like I remember I was like driving through this more populated area because I've been like in the woods for the last few months. It's bizarre. I mean, I grew up here, but like I like see no one ever.
It kind of sounds like a movie scenario for you.
I mean, it's pretty cool, but like I miss people. But I was driving through like a more populated area a couple weeks ago, and I was like, I called my friend and I was like, oh my God, I feel so strongly like I want to go to this Taco Bell right in front of me. Like, this sounds so corny, but I'm passing like fast food places and I'm like getting nostalgic. Like, remember when we could go to a restaurant? Like, remember when we could like just walk down the sidewalk and not fear, like, you know, not have to wear a mask. Like, I mean, it's a huge change, and maybe it will bring, I hope it will bring more positive out of, you know, I hope there will be positive changes from this, and it won't just all be like scary.
It
There
definitely,
must be, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of us are feeling you don't know what you have until it's gone. You know, it's a cliche, but like everyone knows that. Everyone is feeling that right now. A lot of people have some arguing feelings and arguing thoughts internally because it's like for people's safety, or it's like it's also the law in a lot of places, and you could get huge fines, and you don't know what to do with yourself, and then you're staying at home, and even if you're an introverted type and you're more comfortable there, you realize that 1% of your time where you want to be with people, you can't now, and it becomes a bit of a panic. So
Right.
it doesn't matter who you are, unless you're like a real schizoid and you really don't care about people, like, then everyone is nodding their head right now. I'm sure everyone is like, yeah, man, I miss like hugging my grandma. I miss like just going for a walk and like petting somebody else's dog. I miss like going to the grocery store and it not taking a fucking 3 hours or whatever, you know, like there's some subtle stuff, there's some big stuff, a lot of, you know, like, of course it's just not an easy time for everybody, but I can imagine for you it must be this weird like dichotomy, because learning the skills that you have is all a solitary experience. You know, you're sitting down and I'm sure you had teachers and stuff like that, or maybe you didn't, maybe you're self-taught, but you're sitting there and you're honing the skill and you're understanding how lighting works and how 3D works, and you're steadying the hand, and then like you said, you have to kind of learn to challenge that introversion as part of your career.
Right.
So like I don't know, it must be an interesting experience for you, especially now that you're like really in a secluded area. Like it's a sanctuary in a way, but it might even feel like a prison sometimes. I definitely feel for you.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, thank you. Yeah, all of that. I feel all of that. And I think, you know, everyone's feeling that. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to like my work, it's weird because like when I was younger, I thought, I don't really need anybody. I am an introvert. I can just draw by myself in my room, and like no one, like I'll be fine. But now, you know, during this kind of global pandemic, it's like, oh, man, I just miss seeing my friends. I miss like there's something that we get from those experiences that like feeds and nurtures us, and you know, really feeds our souls, I think. So there's that there's like a cauldron inside of us that's like empty, that like needs to be refilled on a regular basis with like that human experience. So, and I was taught by, I've had tons of great art teachers, but I've just always drawn since I was a little kid. So I guess I'm partially self-taught too. Yeah.
No one can do it for you, I guess. Like you could have the best teachers ever, but you have to put in the time, right? You got to put in the reps.
For sure. I went to like this really cool, like hippie charter art school, high school, where we called all our teachers by their first names. It was awesome. We would like have classes in fields, and just like I went to a really rigid public school for 2 years, freshman and sophomore year, and then I got into PVPA, Pioneer Valley Performing Arts Charter Public High School, I think is the whole name. Yeah, it was fun though. I mean, it was so like, I feel like I want to give a shout out to them, because like, I don't know if I would have pursued art as strongly if like during those formative teenage years, I hadn't had such exposure to the arts and like such motivation. Like these teachers were really like my art teachers at the time, Martin and Carl, see, first name basis. They were like, they were just so supportive of us and like getting into art school and like showing us that we could, you know, as students, like you could make a living, you can do this, like you can, there is a need in the world for art, for great art. And that's, you know, we're all seeing that with the Midnight Gospel. I think like people are really enjoying it. It's getting great reviews. So, yeah, just, and then I was fortunate enough to go to an art college in Boston and continue to hone that craft. So like, it's a double-edged sword because there's been times where I haven't been able to find work in my career and I've had to work other jobs. And it's challenging because I'm so like fixated on that life that like I don't want to do anything else. Like I don't want to sound like a spoiled brat, but like I don't want to bag groceries because I've been working on this thing for so long and I know that I'm capable of doing it. So like please continue, people, studios, whatever, to give me work. Like this is my like ask to the universe, you know? Which I think every artist, whether you're a comedian, a musician, like if you've seen a little bit of success, you know that you're capable of doing that, and everybody has creativity inside of them. So, you know, get it out there.
Especially in a world where it's so odd to me how artists are looked at as like the old storyline of the poor artist or whatever, you know, like, and it's not promoted as much in society, but it's so, especially in now where you see everyone's craving entertainment and art, and you know, it's like, it's such, it's the foundation blocks of society is these moments where you can watch a show like Midnight Gospel, appreciate all the work that goes into it, but yet in day-to-day life, at least pre-apocalypse, I'll say, like these kind of positions are still like not shunned, but they're not promoted the same way as someone who wants to be a lawyer or any other kind of job title, which is like going by the standards of the norm. But it's fucking, these are, I'm not going to put a hierarchy on what's more important, but these are so valuable to society. These positions of art, music, comedians, actors, animators, and it's incredible. You know, it's sad in a sense that we don't see that collectively, but maybe we do, and it's growing into that. But it's beautiful.
Yeah, for sure. That's why, like, I don't understand like the naysayers out there who are kind of like, well, we don't need, like, you know, it's more important to have, like, I don't want to do a hierarchy either. Like, I don't want to put these different positions in a hierarchy, but art, like, clearly everyone enjoys art or intakes some form of entertainment. Like, unless you're, I don't know anyone who doesn't like listen to music or podcasts or like comedians or watch animation or watch movies. Like there's no one in our world.
It's
really
part of our culture, and we do it. We watch it and use it all the time.
Yeah, and it's so that makes it just as important as, you know, a farmer who is making our food, right? Like,
yeah, man.
Who's growing the food? Like because art gives us meaning, right? It gives us purpose. Like we can express ourselves and feel connected to other people because we know they feel the same way we do. Or we might have similar takes on philosophies on life and things like that. So, yeah,
this is springing out a question I want to ask you now. Is that, was there a moment in your life where you were going to turn the other way and not give up on this whole path, but maybe you didn't see the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow?
Man,
I know it's a deep question, but it's always wondered, because for artists it can be such a tough journey.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna just say, I'm gonna preface it again with it's a double-edged sword, because I don't know why I keep using that term, but like it's, I don't know any other way to describe it. Like my dad is a farmer. Like he, you know, I grew up on like a 5th generation farm. Like I worked on a farm growing up, and you know, my parents have always been like supportive, but I don't think they understood that it was possible. for me to, like, there's these stereotypes out there that a lot of us listen. We all listen to stereotypes all the time, whether we know it or not. Like, yeah, you can't make a living as an artist, or, that the starving artist stereotype. It's like, I hate that exists, but it does exist, so we have to fight against it. And unless you have a better okay, let me ring it back. What was your question? I'm sorry.
Just like,
was there ever a time when I thought about turning away?
yeah, like maybe you I don't know, just like the path to get anywhere is usually fucking musky, and it's hard to really see what's going on ahead sometimes. So I'm just wondering if, like, was it a clear direction from starting to practicing school and then you getting into this whole career and it worked perfectly, or was it more of like a bumpy fucking road?
It feels a little bumpy to me. I've worked a lot of different kinds of jobs. I'm not fortunate enough that I have like any kind of financial backing. Like, I've had to make a living doing this. And I've also lived, I moved to the San Francisco Bay Area. I lived in Mexico City for a year. I've lived in Boston. I've lived in New York. I didn't plan that journey. It just kind of happened that way. So it's been tough at times, like, but I feel more capable now than I ever have. I feel like this project is, and it's not like a lack of skill. Like, I'm not trying to sound cocky, but like, I know that I'm capable of doing this as a career, but like, there's these voices that are like, no, like, think for any artist, like,
yeah,
you can't do it. Like, there's too much competition. There's these negative voices you have to try to block out. And I'm sure meditation, I meditate here and there, that can help, like yoga, like you were saying, Sammy, like, that's definitely great for peace of mind. And so, yeah, I feel like it's a constant, I feel like my entire career is like, I'm reluctant to say this because now it's going to be online, but it's like, I feel like a big motivator for me is to like prove my dad wrong.
Yeah, man.
And be like, actually,
everyone knows how you feel for that. That's okay. I understand your hesitation. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I love my parents. They're great. But like, not everybody can see that this is a viable career option, especially when you come from like a pretty traditional background. So
yeah, man. And that story, we hear it all the time. And in our lives and other people's lives, it's such a common thing, is where the parents have such a rigid idea of how the path should be, because that's what they took, whether it was out of just safety, that's the safe path they took, and it worked in a sense, and then not transferring those insecurities, I guess, onto to us, which is probably the hardest thing for a parent to do. Because they see their path,
Right. And because like, also like, if you really strip it down, they're doing that because they care about you. Like, yeah, it's not like,
that's a big point.
It's not like they want you to like not enjoy your life or do the thing you want to do. It's because they think that this is the only way that they know that works. Like any of us, right? I only know what I've experienced in my life as an artist and what works for me. So, and what I've read about. So,
isn't it?
I feel like I'm rambling.
Isn't it funny though that they do that because they care, but it almost works against? It's like yeah. The answer is supposed to be, if you care, yes, but now it's your child. You have to care enough to let go and let them experience it. But I see it all the time with some of my friends' parents, whatever. They grab onto all the directions, and their love is actually working against them, and it's a tough one. But, it reminds me of a story. I have a musician, because I do massage therapy, and
oh, cool.
Yeah, and so I was she's a musician, really talented, and I forgot how we started this conversation, but anyway, we were talking about the motive behind going on stage, because she told me she feels alive on stage when the spotlight's on her. And that she was talking with her drummer. She's like, why do we do this? Why do we feel so good with the spotlight on ourselves on the stage? And the drummer's like, it's because of our traumas, our past traumas. We were told that we couldn't do it. And now when the spotlight's on us, we're saying to the crowd, look, can you see me now? Can you see what I'm doing? And it's like they're talking to a specific person maybe. And in that case, it was actually her father, who never thought of her music career as actually being something. So when she's pouring her heart on stage, it's really just for one person in the audience who's not even there probably, which is her father. And when she told me that, was so emotional, man. It was like, holy fuck. Because that visual of the spotlight on her, pouring her heart, asking for him to look, this is what I'm doing it for you, to prove you wrong. It's deep, man.
That's a beautiful story. I mean, I can really see that image. It's amazing.
Yeah. And
it's catharsis too, right? It's like it's a decent motivation. I mean, parents, it's so complicated to be a parent. You're like the god of this child. They're going to die if you don't take care of them every 10 seconds. And then one day you start feeling that shifting, and you have to let them fall. You have to let them get hurt. You have to let them make mistakes. It's so hard to make that shift where you're not the guardian anymore. You're just kind of like the guardian of their confidence now. You just have to encourage them. And it's like, no, like, I need to make sure they make money and survive in society. And I've had all these hard times, and I don't want them to go through that. It's hard for us. It's hard for anybody, but like especially a parent, to be like, no, wait, that's what made me. That's what fucking made me. And the same way someone has a kid and blindly takes care of that kid, you blindly take care of your art. You know, like you Tom Segura said it in his comedy special. The way that you succeed at anything is you look at the end goal and you just focus on the end goal, and it does not matter how you get there. And you were saying how you moved around a lot and you didn't plan any of that because you had this baby in your mind that you just fed and fed and fed, and like, you know, here you are, kind of thing. And the journey is not over, but it's like that catharsis is going to keep happening, and by the time you don't need that catharsis anymore, you just have this full-fledged career. And it's I don't know what it looks like at that point, but like I think a lot of people can relate that it's no one's a closed system, you know. We're all undoing the past in a sense, and it's all about our friends and our parents and archetypes, you know, and the you know, these ideas of like the starving artist that we have to fight, whether they're real or not. They're based on something, and they're true to us because they've been ingrained in us. And it's like meditation or yoga. It's an undoing that gives you that relaxation and that catharsis and that ability to just focus on the work and to just do it. And then you're like, look, it's doable. Look at Midnight Gospel. Look at all, like, every musician ever. You know, there's so many people that will pick up a guitar and work towards that. And it's such a subjective thing because it's art. So it is hard to make it out there. The starving artist is an archetype for a reason. It's a cliche because there's truth to it, like anything.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't stop anybody.
Yeah. It's hard though. That's, you know, fighting against that sometimes. But, you know, when things like this happen, when Midnight Gospel airs, it's a lot easier.
Yeah. And it gives you so much ammunition to your reason, because now it's like, maybe in life there's always ups and downs, even career-wise. Maybe if there's a drought in the forthcoming, at least you can say, look, it happened with Midnight Gospel. I know it's going to happen again. Like, it's like there's like a tangible, real thing you can look on. You can just swipe on, you go on Netflix and it's there. And it's like, fuck, if I did it here, it can happen again. And I just keep working, keep putting my head down, keep working, and then it's going to go on all over again.
Yeah, I mean, like, I remember getting out of college and I had no idea what I was going to do. Like, I had just gotten out of art school. I'd focused on this for so long. And I was a little confused and misguided. And literally, like, the day of my graduation, I was contacted by Google. And they were like, hey, let's interview you for a graphic, like the person who like draws the Google Doodles. It was like a graphic artist role in California. And I was graduating school in Boston. And I was like, holy shit, okay. Like, I was feeling so unsure. And like literally most powerful company in the world just found me. Like that's such a confidence boost.
Yeah.
Like that gave me so much power. Like I was like, wow, okay, like I can do this. Like I didn't get the job, but it didn't matter because they sought me out. You know.
Yeah, you got that boost that you did. I'm curious. I love asking people this because I feel like I get trapped. Like all that fear before someone Google contacts you. You have a lot of doubt and a lot of imposter syndrome and all those things that everyone is all too familiar with. But then when you kind of go over a little like a hill and you start getting this downward momentum, you kind of start getting, like, personally, I get this like relaxation, which is dangerous. I get this like overconfidence, like, oh yes, it is possible.
Yeah.
But like how do you, is that a trap that you fall into? Like, because you keep working, you keep looking for gigs, you keep building your portfolio and building your skill, because you wouldn't be here if you didn't. So like, is there like I don't know, is there just like an ingrained humility in you that you can't really take credit for, ironically, or is there a technique? Is it like
way to call me out.
I know people, man. I know people.
Yeah. No.
I'm just wondering, yeah, is it conscious or is it just through experience? Like, have you had to make those mistakes? Like, what does that look like?
I feel like that's so interesting to hear you say that. For some reason, is there an ingrained humility? Like, for some reason, that's just sticking out of everything you just said. I feel like as any creative person, like who's making a living or not doing it, if you're like passionate and you're motivated, you're always, the collective you. you're always
Hungry.
You're always striving to be better, right? You always want to get better. Like you don't want to you don't want to be stagnant. Like for me anyway, like I always want to, I don't think, like what I learned in art school anyway was like there's never a time where you just plateau. Like you can literally like Rembrandt could still improve on things. Like, so I think an ingrained humility might be a healthy thing for an artist who's always striving to find the next thing. Like, I think, I'm not saying like live in that, but it can be healthy, I think, for your craft to always be pushing it further. Do I get lazy like when I find some form of like when Midnight Gospel came out? Yeah, like I was just like hanging out for days, like like drinking, partying,
celebrating.
Yeah, I mean, because I feel like I earned that, because I feel like I'm always working towards this thing, and like when something great happens, like, yeah, I get to relax. Like I deserve that, But you don't want to, like, as long as you continue working, as long as you're not just giving up.
I'll relate that to MMA fighters, is because I had one fight back in the day, and so what it is so much preparation for that date, whether it's 6 or 8 weeks or 10 weeks training just for that fight day.
You were a fighter?
Well, I had one fight, one amateur fight. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. I was 18. I was crazy. After that fight, I'm like, never again. But so I won, just for context. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was my main goal was just to get one fight. I just want to do one fight, and then we'll see. And then I did it. I'm like, that was amazing. I'm good. It's my bucket list done.
Yeah, I mean, I have this crazy friend who I'm still in touch with from high school. He like had a plane ticket the night of graduation, went to Europe, became a street performer. I talked to him a year later. He was in Thailand, like teaching scuba diving and Thai, and he was a professional Thai kickboxer for like 5 years.
Whoa, okay.
And then like, then I talked to him next time. He's like a year later, he's like plumbing in Switzerland. Like this guy, like,
just figuring it out.
But like the life experiences he's having, like it's amazing. Like I can't even imagine that. So we're constantly inspiring each other, me and my friend Sean, because he always wanted to like have a visual arts career ever since we were back at PVPA together. And I have like a very adventurous spirit. Like I love doing adventurous things. I love hiking. I love going on trips. Sometimes I do things that are a little risky, like row a kayak out to a sunken ship in Aruba and almost drown. But, but like, so it's just cool, like to see people like really living life like that.
Yeah,
like, that's
testing it
what
out.
life's about,
Absolutely,
you know?
man.
Yeah.
You know, and
I kind of want to hear the story now. I'm sorry.
I just threw that in there, just like sprinkle that in.
Yeah, I am that my ears perked up so hard.
Okay, I'll try to tell it really quickly. Because I do love telling this story.
Okay, good.
I was with my ex, and we actually went to Aruba with my family, and we rented kayaks. My ex, Lindsay, and I. So there's like this ship that's like sticking out of the water, and it doesn't look that far out. It looks like maybe, we could kayak there in like 5 minutes and be back, and it'll be fine. So we row our kayaks out to the ship, and I'm like looking underwater, like I'm seeing like all these eels and amazing fish swarming around it underwater, and it's so beautiful. And then I hear Lindsay yell, and I look, and she's like way further out than me. I'm like, "Hey, what's up? Are you okay?" And she's like, "I can't row in. The wind is too strong. The current is too strong." So I'm like, "Okay, stay calm. I'm coming." And I come out there with my kayak, and she literally like it was too strong. Like we were right next to each other trying to row in, and every time she would take a breath and like stop for a second, she'd be like 5 feet out, 5 feet further out than she was. So I tied the nose of, there was like this rope in my kayak, and I connected the nose of her kayak to the back of my kayak, and I thought I could kind of tow her, which is probably a horrible idea. Like these things are like buoyant and like built in a certain way where they need to be like, rest. I don't know. Anyway, so I'm going, and she's trying to row, and then this huge ship goes by us, and I'm like, wow, that was our chance. Like after it passes, I was like, well, if we're screwed, like at least like I should have called out to that ship, and now it's gone. So I kept rowing, and all of a sudden I feel my kayak like really like tipping side to side, like it's taking on water. Okay. And I tell Lindsay, I'm like, "Hey, don't panic, but I'm going in the water." Like I didn't even describe like what was about to happen. I was just like,
"Oh shit!
Don't worry, it's gonna be fine." But I'm going under. Like,
so, like you're sitting in front of me talking, so I know how the story ends, and I'm still kind of freaking out right now.
And like for the record, like
oh shit,
the shoreline, the beach is like a splinter now. It is so far away. I don't know how we got pushed out. The wind is just so powerful. And the people who rented us these kayaks, I realized once I fall into the water, we don't have life jackets. Like they didn't give us life jackets. We hadn't eaten anything. It was like we were on vacation, and we had like drinking a Corona, like one Corona. We're just like clearly not like
one low calorie beer in your stomach.
Yeah, and I get seasick regardless. But anyway, so my kayak takes on water, and it tips because hers is pulling mine down, and there was a hole in the side of mine, so it was filling up with water. And so for some reason I was afraid of leaving the kayak. I was like in the heat of the moment, like they're gonna charge us, like we're gonna get in trouble, like I'm just panicking. So I tie it now to the back of her kayak so that it's dragging behind her, like hanging hanging underwater kind of. And I'm like hanging onto the side of her kayak, and I swam for 2.5 hours.
Holy shit.
Oh, fuck.
While holding on to her kayak, we were just trying to get back into shore, and it just kept pushing us. Finally, a party boat goes by, and I climb on. I'm like, my legs are like spaghetti. Like I can't. I think I fell once I got on the boat because I couldn't. My legs were just shot from swimming, you know? And I like to this guy, the driver, I'm like, will you can you please go get my girlfriend? Like she's floating out. He's like, hey man, he like cracks this joke, which I'm not in the mood for. He's like, you're supposed to save her, man. I'm like, you motherfucker. But they ended up
good on him though. That was
but they ended up, they went out, they got her, they tied the kayak up. The guys who rented to us come out, they're like, hey, we thought you went to Venezuela. Like, we were wondering where you were. Jeez. Like, dude, my kayak had a hole in it. They didn't give us our money back, nothing. Like, once we were on shore, I was just grateful to be, like, on solid ground. And I mean, that's it. But it was like, I mean, being out in that water, though, I really felt, I really kind of accepted my mortality. And like my family was kind of making light of it after, like, oh yeah, you were fine, like blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, like I was prepared to drown, like mentally. Like I knew that was possible in that moment because we weren't making any progress and we were out there for so long, It's crazy.
You got saved. Like you literally got saved.
But
so
I feel you, man, because in that moment there's so much uncertainty that you don't know if you're going to make it. And yes, the story sounds light because a party boat came and picked you up and then got your girlfriend. But for those 2.5 hours was real to you. It was really, the end was in sight in a sense where you were really unsure.
Right. And like, obviously I was trying my hardest, right, to like get us in. But like, there's a certain point where you say to yourself, is this going to go in the other direction? Like,
yeah.
Are we going to make it?
Dude, this rings a bell inside me. I have not a swimming story, but I have a similar story where that experience kind of happened, where I was really unsure. And obviously I'm here, but in the moment was terrifying. And it was in Thailand. I was, I was just going like temple hopping with my scooter. And then I was going to a big temple, so I was on a highway, and then I saw this random temple, massive. In Thailand, you can find a temple every 2 kilometers. It's pretty wild.
That's awesome.
So I go there. It was like a Sunday, I believe, or something, and it was kind of closed, but it was open. So I just walked in, but there's no one there. It's empty. And I'm going to the staircase, and I see a dog in the distance starting to bark, and then he starts running towards me. Him and 2 other dogs. I'm like, oh, fuck. And Thailand, there's wild dogs everywhere. Some are nice. Some are really aggressive.
Right.
And they come at me like as if they were starving. So they're barking. There's 3 dogs at that moment. And I'm on like the 3rd step to get into the entrance of the temple. And the temple's closed. And they're just at the bottom, just barking. And I'm like, fuck, get the fuck away. Like, go away, little dogs. They weren't that big. But then they kept barking. And then out of nowhere, 3 more dogs show up. So now we're talking about 6 wild dogs getting aggressive. And I'm on the 3rd step and I am like, okay, this is like, my heart's racing. I'm like, okay, this is not a joke anymore. I might actually have to fight these dogs. So I take off my helmet and I'm looking at
metal.
But it relates to your story because there was that moment where it's like, there's a lot of uncertainty happening at that moment. I'm really unsure if what's happening next because these dogs are gaining confidence. So I have my helmet and then another dog comes, I think like the father or the mother. So there's like 6 medium-sized small dogs and then a big dog. And they start barking and growling and they start coming up the steps and I'm swinging my helmet just to keep them away.
Yeah.
And I remember at that point, it was like back to like my MMA fight. It was like that hyper focus where everything's gone and it's just, okay, this is really calculating survival. I'm going to have to get bitten a bunch of times, but I'm going to have to hit the big one. And like, this is actual processing that was happening. and they're climbing up the steps, and I'm backing up a step, and I'm about on the 6th step now, and they're on the 3rd, and one goes, backs up, and then the other goes, backs up, and then they're like testing me, and I'm thinking, and I'm kind of looking around, but staying focused if there's any other steps, any ways to get up the temple, because if they come from behind. And I'm telling you, dude, this was about 15 minutes of just back and forth, swinging, screaming. I was growling back at them, and they were barking. And there was like this moment where I'm like, fuck, I don't know if I'm going to make this, man. Like I really, this has progressed into something so terrifying that I don't really know what the fuck's going to happen next.
How have you never told me this story?
I thought I did. No?
I don't know, man. I smoke a lot of weed.
Yeah.
I feel like I'd remember this, though.
So,
holy shit.
So this was literally 15-minute stare down, and I'm thinking as it's happening, and my helmet's getting closer and closer, and they keep backing up, but coming forward, backing up, coming forward. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe I'm going about this wrong. Like, is there something I can do differently? And I don't know what happened. I think we were all just getting fatigued. So I just started to put down my helmet and look at them, because I have a dog, so I kind of understand dogs in a little sense. And they start calming down. And it was like this weird moment of like neutrality where we're just like, you know what? We both have a white flag. This is too much effort to eat, because they were clearly hungry, but this was too much work for them. And they actually started calming down, and I started calming down, and to the point where I actually put my hand out like this. And then the little one went first, smelt me, backed up. Then the father came, smelt me, backed up, and we were best of friends after that. I don't understand going from high adrenaline to about to kill these fucking dogs, and they're about to kill me, to we're like homies now, and I'm cuddling with the little one and petting it. The father like came to me, sniffed me, walked away like you can take care of my kids for a bit.
They were like testing you, or like the universe was testing you, or something. Like
man, it was. And your story just brings back all those memories of really that uncertainty, and that like. And then I'm telling the story. I call my parents right after. I'm like talking a mile a minute, and they're like, "Oh, but you're okay." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good."
Right,
I call my other friend. They're like, "Oh, you're okay." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fucking good." But there's 15 minutes where it was death. I thought I was gone.
Right, and it's like so. You try to explain that to people, and like of course like they can't feel what you just felt, so it's hard to like relate to anyone who hasn't gone through what you just went through, maybe
they don't want to,
right?
You know, it's like you just went through, you're like, I just had a near-death experience, and they're like imagine it's like my son almost just died, my brother almost just died. They're like, no, you're fine, you're talking to me, like I don't have to feel those feelings. And then you're like, I almost just died. You know, like, is this real?
Like there was 15 minutes of war going on.
That's insane.
Yeah, that one, I remember my heart was pounding for like 3 hours after I left. I went back on my scooter. I said peace to them. I even gave them I had banana chips. I gave them some banana chips. And
can I ask you both something? Because this isn't sparking anything for me. Like I've had some psychedelic trips where I had like these ego deaths. I've had some near-death experiences, but they were like instant, like, holy shit, I almost just died. Like I hit by a car, almost hit by a speeding car. Like I didn't have the moments to think and accept my death. Do you guys, I don't know, I guess Greg go first or something. Like let's organize this a little bit. But like, did this change your life? Like maybe even in an unconscious way, did this fuel you and make you like, oh, I have to do shit. Like I have to buckle down. Like I could die.
I feel like it did. It's hard for me to say because I don't know how I would be if I hadn't experienced that. But I do feel like it definitely made me a lot more grateful for a lot of things. I think I felt like when I was younger, I felt like maybe I was kind of invincible. I used to do like a lot of risky things. Like me and my friends would like break into abandoned buildings and like do crazy stuff. Or like I'd climb like really high things that I shouldn't be climbing. Like, so yeah, like I think I'm more cautious a little bit, but like I'd still do things like I still do like crazy adventurous things, but like I guess I'm more attuned to the fact that maybe I guess I'm more cautious. I'm not really sure how else to expand on that.
I feel you though. It's like you gained like a good fear. it's not like a controlling fear or like a phobia, like an irrational fear. It's just
Something
kind of
that
like a
limits you.
respect.
Yeah, it's not limiting.
It's like this is how you survive
Yeah.
here. Like
Yeah.
like even in a setting where like tourists go on vacation to Aruba and you think everything's safe, right? Like you go to Disney World, wherever you go, like pre-pandemic, you think like everyone normally has like this sense that maybe they're not even aware of, that like, well, I'm safe here. Like this is our world and we know it's safe. But I think everyone now is experiencing like the opposite of that. They're like, wow, maybe the world's not safe. Like maybe we need to be more careful. Maybe we need to be more conscious about a lot of things to prevent
the mortality is being challenged, you know?
Right.
And that's where I actually now can parallel our stories to what's happening. And I think it generally might be actually for the better down the road, because what I did get also out of that dog story was, firstly, I called my parents right after it happened, instinctually, which was actually, now that I'm processing it, it's been a year, but that's beautiful in a sense. It's like I called my parents right after I almost died, you know?
Yeah.
And the gratitude is definitely there. When you really don't know what the fuck's next, you're not thinking of anything but survival, you know? And then when you have your survival back in your grasp and you survived, then it's like what really matters is just your friends, your family, and your life. You know, not all the other story that we operate on. I didn't think of anything but getting the fuck out of there. And I do remember actually a thought that came into my mind was like, this can't be the way it's going to end. Or this is like the storyline you hear all the time. A fucking tourist goes solo trip and then does something stupid and gets killed. You know, like it's this, I don't want to be that the warnings that everyone's been telling me to be careful. I don't want to fit into that category of, it's pretty dark, but I told you so, but I'm dead, you know?
Right.
or just damaged, because that would have been a very bad scene, whether I lived or died. It was, if it escalated, I would have been torn up. But
and it's interesting to hear you say like you had that moment where you were saying to yourself, this can't be the way it ends. Because maybe like dogs, I mean, dogs are so instinctual. Like animals are so much, I feel like, more instinctual than we are in a lot of senses. And like maybe they picked up on that. Maybe that was the moment where you're like, click, this isn't happening. You're like, no. You're like telling those dogs like
dude, it's exactly that.
Like or whatever. Yeah.
Because I think it was around that time where I was really getting into that processing. I'm like, this can't be how it ends. Like, there's got to be a way out of this. And then I guess it showed in my energy change, and then they mirrored it, because dogs like to mirror also. They you know, domesticated or not, these dogs have been around people and tourists. They're not foreign to what a human is. So they were able to feed off of that energy change. Instead of fighting fire with fire, all of a sudden they realize, oh wait, he's not as aggressive right now. Let's tone it down. It's not the case if it was a bunch of wild cats or like a wolf or anything, but these are dogs, right? So I think that switch, you know, fuck. But that 15 minutes, man, it could have been even a half hour. I don't know the actual timeline, but that was some heavy shit, man. And I think the world is kind of going into that right now, is that our mortality is being tested, and the momentum is stopped, and we're all processing now. Like, holy fuck, this is not the world that I thought it was. You know, my friends' grandparents are dying, whatever. Like, there's actual numbers that this thing has killed. Maybe I need to hold the horse a little bit and think about my life a little bit more and what matters. You know?
Yeah, for sure.
Because on our individual story, we're having very similar themes that were gained from it. So
yeah, I'm so happy. I mean, that you like survived that, man. That's crazy. Like that.
It could have been the end, man. Both of us, you know.
Yeah.
It's
still left out now.
I mean, that doesn't. You have to go try to have a.
No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I don't want to almost die.
It's not a fun thing, Sammy. It could have been way worse.
I'm just trying to derive the wisdom out of it, but I think it is an experience, and I can't like intellectualize it. Like, you guys came face to face with like a real fragility and of your lives, of the world, and that's scary, maybe even traumatizing, but it's very informative. And there's a lot that you see now in that light. What is fragile? What isn't fragile? What can be tested? What can be pushed, bent, that won't break? And then what really does need to be protected, in these crazy unconscious ways. I'm sure you guys, experiences shape us, and those are hyper and real experiences.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Man, I love how like the flow of this, just like where this podcast went. It's crazy.
It just goes, man. It's a ship that's going with the currents, and wherever it talks, wherever we go, we go. And cat ship.
I had to. I'm sorry.
Comes full circle. I think there's
a lot of actually there's a lot of common themes through this with like a lot of common images, right? It's like life, death, mortality, like the ship and the ocean.
Even manifestation, like we're talking about the guiding the dog's emotions through your acceptance, like that whole episode with the fishbowl man and the ice cream and everything. Like he's talking about magic and he's talking about intention, right? Like it's all in there. To be fair, Midnight Gospel touches on a lot of stuff, like just so much stuff. So I'm sure we could pull out, even without reaching too far, we could just pull out like anything you want to talk about that's like deep. I'm sure Midnight Gospel at least grazes it, if not drills into it.
For sure.
Before we end this, I just thought about it. You spending 50 something times drawing a ship, and then I hear this story about you getting saved by a ship. It's just such a weird mind fuck from the universe.
Oh God. Yeah. Maybe that's why the ship was challenging for me. Maybe it was like I was going back to like some traumatic memory. Like
that's some fucked up shit, man.
Yeah.
We're not in any kind of rush to finish. We just kind of want to respect the time there, but we're loosey goosey, like, is there anything else you want to talk about? Like you mentioned a comic series that you have, like anything you want to expand on. We could talk about fucking psychedelics. We could talk about the universe. Like,
yeah,
I'm curious about this comic series though.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about my comic series.
Nice.
Just kind of briefly. And I'm in no rush either. So, but awesome. I know we don't make it like a 4-hour podcast. So,
I get the feeling we could.
No, like, so yeah, my comic series I've been actively working on it for like 5 years. But I've been thinking about it for like 10 years. It's called The Tales of Reverie. It's actually inspired by childhood dreams I had and night terrors that I had when I was a kid. And I also feel like when I was a child, I have a very vivid recollection of astral projecting. So I have done psychedelics in my life, but I feel like these experiences that I had, like these very surreal, vivid visions I had from these dreams that I remembered from when I was a child, they just stayed with me for so long. Like they're still with me, and I try to express them through this comic series. It's about a young boy who, it's basically about me. I mean, it's about a young boy who's like between these two worlds, and it's a world building project. If you guys are familiar with the term, it's my way to explore like a lot of character design and world building, and it's a big lush fantasy world because I have fun doing that kind of stuff. And I mean, I guess I could give you the log line if I could sum it up.
Sure.
Okay. 11-year-old Noose embarks on a quest to the parallel dream world Reverie to find his missing father and help the mythical elementals save nature from destruction.
Nice.
That's it.
I'd love to, because you mentioned like world building is something that might get thrown around, and it's actually kind of like an internal artist jargon. And the way I understand it is you're building a world. I don't want to sound too simple, but like there's rules, there's There's
Yep.
maybe an economy, there's a history, there's maybe like if there's magic, there's kind of like a way that system of magic works. There's a way that people might live and die. There might be an afterworld. There's a geography, like there's characters, there's a micro and macro story happening, and you really build the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I didn't want to jump in.
It's kind of a question. Like, am I right? Like, is that?
Yeah, no, you're right. And I mean, you can look at like the most grand examples of that. You look at like Tolkien, right? You look at like Lord of the Rings, or you look at, I mean, let's bring it back to Duncan Trussel. Like, he built the worlds of the Midnight Gospel with Penn Ward for years. Like, it's a really fun process for me, as someone who kind of identifies as like being somewhere between a writer and an artist. Like, I'm never satisfied when I feel like there's this part of me that's not satisfied when I'm just doing illustration or animation. I mean, don't get me wrong. Obviously, like, I loved working on Midnight Gospel. I have a lot of projects I love working on, but as I have like this strong desire to tell a story, and kind of build a story and build a world. So I have a Patreon where I work on this, and I release content a few times a month. And yeah, it's a really fun project. If you're into fantasy, if you're into kind of trippy, surreal stuff, if you're into Midnight Gospel, I think you'd probably be into it.
Nice. Give a plug, man. I want to check this out, and for all our listeners.
It's just patreon.com/Gregery Miller.
I'll put a link too in the description.
Yeah, and just so my name is spelled a little differently. Gregery. Gregery is normally Ory, but I guess my parents wanted me to be slightly different. I have no good story. Literally no good story about why my name is, like, I ask my mom all the time. I'm like, why did you guys spell it like that? And she's like, well, I guess like my parents, like, I had a pretty standard like religious. I'm not religious, but like when I was younger, I guess we went to church and stuff, and I was baptized, and I guess the priest to my mom was like, well, you're ruining his life. Like, you shouldn't, don't spell his name like that. It's like a super dick. like
Amazing.
Like, come on,
man.
Like, no.
Yeah, but it's character, you know. Like, my real name is Alexander. My mom has called me Sammy since I was like 6 years old, and then she's like, you know, your real name's Alexander, right? And I was like, huh? Like, I didn't even know. Sammy doesn't exist anywhere. Like, it's just a nickname. But like everyone, my dad even thought it was my name for a while. Like, he forgot that it was not on my birth certificate. And it's just given me this kind of like, it didn't ruin my life, but it's like a thing I have to fucking deal with all the time. And it just adds a little character. It makes you a little more like personable. It makes you have a little like, as soon as you meet somebody, it's like, oh, what's your name? It's like, oh, well, you can call me Greg, or you can call me Gary. That's how it's spelled, you know? Like, you have this little, I don't know if you ever used that joke. It's yours if you want it.
I wonder how Elon Musk's son is going to be. You guys saw his name? It's like AR180 or something, or X. It's just a weird coded name.
I mean, there's so many names are going to just get crazier and crazier, which is, I think, is awesome. Like, I mean, you should be able to name your child whatever you want. Like, it doesn't have to stick to traditional, you know, norms. I'd rather it. So,
I'm somewhere on the fence about that. I mean, I'm sure people will agree and disagree based on, because you just want to, it's your kid, you want to give them something, but like, it's them after. Like, if you name your kid like 11 from like Stranger Things, and then they call them L or something for short, there's a ring to that and it sounds cool. But if you name your kid like Spoon, you know, like you are fucking kid's life up a little bit, you know. And I mean, who am I to say? But I don't want to name my kid Spoon. Let's just leave it at that. You know, I don't know. But I this is a weird tangent. I just want to go back. Tales of Reverie. Like, is some of this stuff out? Like, there's content? Like, can I?
Yeah, there's about 70 pages of comic storytelling. There's a lot of character design and maps and world building online. If you go to the talesofreverie.com, I have everything up there. And yeah, I've been actively, like I said, making this project for 5 years, but I've been thinking about it for about 10 or, I mean, even longer. Like, so yeah, I mean, it's ongoing. I'm continuing to produce new content all the time. So that's what my Patreon is for, just to help fund it. And if people subscribe to my Patreon, they can get original artwork from me. They can get merch from my shop, art prints, comics. Yeah, so I feel like the art speaks better for itself than I do. So please go look at it.
I can't wait, man. I can't wait. It sounds so personal to you also, and so fueled by your actual experiences, and they're very psychedelic experiences, even though it was like this kind of mystical astral projection stuff, like not necessarily drugs or plant medicines, but still very psychedelic sounding. I can only imagine. I'm down, man. I feel like I'm a fan already. I don't like, yeah, I'm fucking down. I'm down like Chinatown.
Thanks, man. Yeah. It's like the most fulfilling project for me. It is very personal, and I'm going to keep working on it, until it's done. And I don't know when that's going to be. I'm on page 70, and I feel like I've barely scratched the surface, honestly.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Fuck yeah, man.
Thanks for the plug. Thanks for letting me do a plug for my stuff.
Dude, thanks for coming on, man. You never know what to expect when we were meeting for the first time, essentially, and we were talking about it before, like with the pandemic, like you can't meet in person, but like you're not exactly close by, like this is like a little miracle of technology. But like, dude, I feel like we could have a beer together. Like, you're a fucking cool dude, and it's
you guys do for sure. Awesome.
I would honestly. Oh, please.
I hope we can do that someday soon.
I was gonna say the same thing, and honestly, like, I don't say this with every guest, and most of them I mean it. Like, I would love to have you on again. I feel like we could talk about, like, we obviously focused on Midnight Gospel and on the process of art and on your experiences. But like, I would love to talk to you about like psychedelics, about astral projection, about like how those things have fueled your art, how they fueled your life. Like, you just at the end of the day, I just like talking to people, and you seem like a cool cat, man.
Yeah, no, you too, man. Like, I'd love to come out again. Like, get a couple other guests on, and then I'll come back.
Hell yeah, man.
Yeah, I don't want to.
You got anything to fucking? Oh, sorry.
So, what'd you say?
Oh, I was just saying, like, I want to give you guys the floor. Let's end this thing on a sexy note.
Well, dude, that was. I'm happy we had that relatable experience at least, and that
sure.
It's funny, it's weird, man. I don't know how this thing works, this thing we call life, but this story was actually spinning in my head recently, and I'm like, I want to share this on the podcast, the dog story, and. You explain you saying your story, just they hit me. I'm like, fuck, now it needs to come out. And the fact that we can relate is just, I feel you. I felt what you went through, man. And I'm sure you feel the same way when I explain my story. And it's a blessing we're here. And maybe it came out because it is some knowledge to share with everyone going through this pandemic, that there is usually, I believe there's going to be a brighter end to this. And that once we get through this, we're going to have deep gratitude once all the fear passes, because it's already, from when the pandemic started till now, I can already sense it and see it. People are slowly getting back to normal. Like the facts are coming in, the numbers are coming in, and we're starting to tune down those defense mechanisms. But what comes after all the fear, when it's gone and settled and reflection's done, is gratitude for the tiny little things in life. The beers with the friends, the being in a fucking grocery store with 100 people. Like, these are what makes life. These are the background images in Midnight Gospel that make the show. These are everything. This is the canvas that we operate on, and without it, it's just a white canvas that you were talking about, the white background. Like, you need everything to work. So that's that little poetic parallel with Midnight Gospel into real life.
That was beautiful, and I can't even compare. Like, I'm trying to think of something like witty and easy to say at the end of this, but I like, thank you, Nathaniel. That was awesome.
Thank you for coming on, man, and thank you for the work you've done, and keep doing it, because clearly we need artists in this life. It's part of life, and it makes life. So thank you for your services and your beautiful work, and fuck yeah, man.
Fuck yeah. Thank you guys. Keep doing what you're doing. And I look forward to seeing this and to seeing more of your podcasts and seeing more of your art.
Hell yeah,
you guys work for sure.
Oh, man, that means a lot. Thank you.
Yeah. Stay in touch. And let's chat more.
All right, brother. Okay.
Fucking deal, man.
All right.
Peace.
Yeah. Have a great
Peace,
day, guys.
man.